experiences and reflect upon what this curriculum meant to them, I'll introduce Frank Powell, Susan Chandler, and Catherine Mobley.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here, and nice to see so many welcoming friends, a place where I can feel comfortable holding many of the views that I hold about the way we should be living, and to be sitting between these two women whose lives I've begun to understand as a result of several hours of participation in our Green Sanctuary retreat is a real pleasure. To remind you that this is the eve of Earth Day 43, I wanted first to say that I was in my second year of college teaching when a couple of students approached me about this thing called Earth Day. And as the youngest faculty at my small college, I agreed to become involved. And it did transform substantially my view of the world. At that time, with my wife Jane and our first of two children, I recognized that there was more out there than just the struggle that I was facing, and how fortunate indeed I have been all of these years to have been born into privilege and to have had the opportunity to gain a good education and in some ways look at how I could ultimately give back. And so part of our lives in this last trimester of our life expectancy is very much oriented in that way.
Well, I could go on for hours about the earth and what it means to me. And okay. Can you hear me now? I sound like a Verizon commercial. Yeah. I came to this Green Sanctuary program hoping to get connection with all of you guys and with the community about something that really, really means very, very much to me. And to find support in my own efforts and to learn more, because even though ever since I was a little girl, I spent hours and hours in the woods and just loved the earth and nature and things. Sometimes it's really discouraging. You know, I go to my local manned convenience center in Oconee County with my recyclables and the least amount of garbage that I can generate and see people with bags and bags and bags of recyclables going into the landfill, and I get really discouraged. I get really sad because it's not just, for me, it's not just about the people that come after me. It's about the earth as a whole. It's about this awesome place. A lot of you know that I have rocks in my head. I studied geology for a few years, and what that has given to me is something I consider priceless, an appreciation of the history of the earth, of deep time, of how very insignificant our species is. In Geology 101, the professor said to me, suppose this is the history of the earth from your elbow to your fingertip, the tip of your fingernail. Take an emery board and swipe it across your fingernail. You've erased human history. For some odd reason, that's comforting to me, like that song that we just sang. When we are gone, they will remain. The earth, the processes, the wind, the fire, the rain. So that's why I came, is because this means so much to me. It's sacred. And so I want to learn all I can and try to change my life the way I can, and to try to be a part of letting not just the people in my sphere, but everybody know how much it means, and that they should recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle. So that's why I came to the Green Sanctuary training.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Mobley, and I feel really privileged to have been able to participate in our workshop with that was led by Teresa Prizzuto. And I'm inspired by, as I reflect on what I learned from the workshop, I think about the UUA 7th principle, which is, does everybody know what that is? Respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And I'm inspired by a quote from Nikos Kazantzakis. Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is the meaning of this life? That is what every heart is shouting and what every head is asking as it beats on chaos. And so when I think about the interdependent web of life, I sort of reflect on the past, and that was just beautifully reflected in the song from She Sings. When we are gone, they will remain. And sometimes when I'm driving in, I live out in 6 Mile, and it's 13 miles out there, and we try to plan our trips real carefully into town. And I try to imagine, what was it like, 100 years ago or 200 years ago? Was this a path? What's under the road? What did it look like? What kind of legacy did the people before me leave? I also think of the future. I learned recently that if you were born after 1985, so the current generation's about 28 years old and after, that you have never experienced a month with colder than average temperatures. And so that's the new normal, right? And I think of my 11-year-old daughter and what that means. I, always sort of, is that okay?
Time. I've chosen to focus on something that many of my friends in this group appreciate. put it into a verifiable offset, you will easily be able to erase from your memory that carbon dioxide that you're routinely putting into the atmosphere because of your extravagant lifestyle relative to the majority of our species. So it's easy to find carbon offsets.
Frank, could you explain exactly what a carbon offset is? Some people may not understand that.
Well, it's quite easy to determine from where carbon dioxide emanates in your life. And the tailpipe, both the natural and the vehicle that you drive, are good sources. Most notably, what you drive and what you eat are the major determinants. If you eat animals, then you are contributing to probably the second, if not the first, largest source of carbon dioxide production on the planet. And that's 800 million cows and countless millions and billions of chickens and so forth that humans consume in an excess of what is necessary. But we also tend to drive fossil fuel powered vehicles which produce carbon dioxide and fill that little varnish coating around the earth as we know it with needless concentrations of carbon dioxide. So anything that we can do through renewable energy purchases or supporting research for non-fossil fuel powered vehicles or ways to support more sustainable whole food plant-based agriculture all go a long way in reducing our carbon production. Look at the checks you write and the money that you spend, and I think you can probably afford to give a little bit back.
Speaking now as a very non-affluent single mother of 4 children who worked 2 jobs to raise them in New Jersey, I can tell you, you don't have to be affluent to care about the earth. What I started learning in New Jersey was recycling, because they started doing that municipally a long time ago, because it's the most densely populated state in the nation, and they'd be buried in garbage if they didn't. But anyway, we started doing that, and my children learned to do that. So whether you've got money to buy carbon offsets or enough money to afford a Prius or what have you, sometimes being green can be a little more expensive. Do it where you can, but you don't have to do that. You know, you can reduce, reuse, recycle, teach your children, teach yourself, be committed, because it matters. So it's, if you've got the money, watch how you spend it. If you don't have the money, watch how you spend it when you can, and when you can't, do what you can, you know, and teach your children.
I'm thinking about social justice issues in the local community, and I do invite you to look at the map in the social room, and it really brought to the surface the past, and made me think about, you know, the surrounding community and the social inequality that we often overlook in a university town, and how environmental burdens disproportionately affect certain segments of our population, and what does that mean for us and our community as we try to live more sustainable lives? How can we embrace the broader community?
Thank you, Catherine. Susan, thank you.
I just want to tell you guys, if you've seen it,
Thank you. You all can remain up there. I'm going to deviate from the order of service just a little bit and open this up to conversation from you all now. Do any of the rest of you have anything that you would like to add or any questions that you would like to ask Susan or Frank or Catherine? Yeah.
I'm interested, Catherine, you did say that how we handle our views or our approach to sustainability disproportionately affects people in our communities who are low income. Could you spell out, just give us one or two examples of that?
Well, I'm probably thinking more from a global perspective. Frank might be able to jump in here with specific, this idea that it takes so many Earths to support a lifestyle of an American versus a smaller number of Earths, I guess, to support individuals in developing countries. And there's a lot of research that I won't go into that shows that, for example, landfills are disproportionately located in low-income areas. And you can go to the U.S. EPA website and type in your zip code. I'm not sure what section of the EPA website. And even go by census tract, because we know even within Clemson, the 29630 zip code has many different income levels. And you can see that the brown fields that are potentially dangerous are disproportionately located in lower income neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Beth. Anybody else? Questions or thoughts? Or
I'd like to share a few thoughts about the first Earth Day. Earth Day began in Madison, Wisconsin. I was in graduate school there at the time. So I was there at the first Earth Day. It had been a long, long winter with people bundled up under their scarves and wraps and so on, and not many people were out on the street. We were still grinding along in the Vietnam War. The community was very divided. The students who were protesting the war and the older, more established people on the west side of the city, the nice part of the city, thinking we were all hippies and radicals and so on. And so everyone was in sort of a funk. And then the sun came out, the snow melted, and it was either the mayor or the governor of the state or both, I think it was the governor, who announced that we would have an Earth Day. And that just happened to coincide with the first really nice sunny weekend that we'd seen since October or so. And so everybody came out, and it was such a unifying thing that everybody could support, because who could be against the Earth? And so it was just a joyous celebration of people out and about and in their spring clothes for the first time in months. And I'm just so happy that it took off and became what it is today.
I'm looking for really concrete things to do in day-to-day life. And I remember about 10 years ago, a member of our congregation talked about Scotch tape, right? And he said to me, you should buy Scotch brand Scotch tape. Why? Because when you make Scotch tape, apparently there's a lot of byproducts. And the way Scotch brand makes it somehow handle the byproducts in a responsible way that the cheap Scotch tape people didn't. So I thought, okay, 20 cents more per roll, and I can do something good for the earth. So I wonder what else is known, buy this, not that we could kind of start a list so we could make choices like that are just little teeny things that might help.
One of the things that we decided we were going to try to do moving forward from the Green Sanctuary curriculum was to start something maybe like the Green Sanctuary Tip of the Week, doing things about finding out things like you're talking about and answers to other questions and sharing them on a weekly basis in different ways. If anybody has any ideas, we're very open to it. Just to give you another thing, this Carolina Certified Yard, I volunteer with Pickens County Stormwater Partners, in part because water pollution used to be something called point source pollution, like from factories and stuff like that. But nowadays, the biggest source of water pollution is stormwater runoff. So one important thing that everybody in this room can do is to learn more about how you contribute to stormwater runoff pollution. And you can go to carolinayards.com or the Clemson Extension Service, or I can get you the information. So that's another thing you can do, is to learn how to decrease what you contribute to stormwater runoff pollution. Okay, comment?
having come from Florida, where I lived for about 35 years, one of the things that I noted about my own self, my person, is that I stayed sick a lot in Florida. And regardless of where you live, we live in modern Western culture virtually bathed in chemicals. And I remember as a young mom looking at my children who were also suffering from the sniffles and whatnot, that I decided at a certain point to try to do something about that and stopped using household pesticides. If you live in a semi-tropical or tropical culture, and especially when where agriculture is sort of the basis of economic power, you live with all of that stuff. And when I moved to the mountains of North Carolina and bought a house high up on the mountain, had a septic tank, and I became acutely aware in a different way that everything that goes down the potty comes up in your drinking water. And it really came clear to me after years of avoiding those kinds of chemicals and pesticides in the household environment. And I'm talking Windex and all these things that you buy and use, that piece by piece you get it. That whereas we know that a lot of disease is caused by these chemicals that are really pervasive in our living environment, it not only affects us, it affects other people. And in very profound ways. The area of North Florida where I lived for many years is one of the highest levels of cancer. We pretty much know that long-term exposure to those kinds of chemicals in the environment causes cancer. That's a no-brainer. Interestingly, though, nobody really wants to speak up and say that in a very public way. So part of the conversation about sustainability is being mindful of the kinds of products you use and the way you use them. As with stormwater runoff, that's pretty much toxic water, and that goes into the earth, which comes up through the food we eat. I know you know that by back and forwards, but that said, being aware that what we do not only affects ourselves but our children, and we teach our children well, but I have come to the place where my daughters have taught me well. One of my daughters is an environmental consultant and works in Washington, D.C., advising the federal government. So having showed her how not to use chemicals around the house, she's now educated me as to how to live much more sustainably. So,
my name is Carol. I just wanted to tell you guys that the General Assembly is going to be in Louisville this year, and I got my ticket this week, and I gave money for a carbon offset when I bought the ticket.
We'll have Ken and Chuck, and then I think we'll need to wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Ken, and it's interesting that humans, I believe, are the only species that generates waste. Everybody else, all other waste that's generated by different animals is used by other animals, and so we're the only ones that generate waste. And in terms of businesses that complain about EPA regulations, anything that is pollution is a signal that you have an inefficient process. And every time that an industry has followed the EPA rules, put in something to make a cleaner process, they've increased their profitability. So that argument doesn't work. And following up on the chemicals, the Kiwi Sailing Club was using Clorox to clean the floors. It went into the drains, killed the bacteria in the septic system, and they ended up having to do an overhaul in the septic system for a few $1,000s.
Just one more historical note on Earth Day. I sent Carol an article about a new book that goes back into the history of Earth Day and what a grassroots kind of experience it was. In 1970, I was principal of an elementary school, and I had a young faculty, and they really got into this first Earth Day, and we had the kids doing all kinds of things, and we had teach-ins for the parents. And I remember the students talking later about that they were never going to litter. They were always going to pick up everything. And I thought, wow, this is great. It's going to be the end of litter. And now, 43 years later, when I'm over in Pendleton on West Queen on the hill going down to 76, and I pick up a couple bags of trash once a month. I said, well, I guess we still have a litter problem.
We have one more. Cecil?
Okay. And just to say something about that, another thing, idea we came up with in this curriculum is to adopt a mile of highway, the UUFC.
I want to make one comment about the importance of advocating for good regulations and so forth. One of the things we pat ourselves on the back a lot about is our parking lot. But truth be known, that we were compelled into that system because when we were building this building, we didn't have as much parking. And to get the required number of parking places, we would have exceeded the limit of impermeable cover. So we figured out how to satisfy both of them because we had to, not because we thought it was a nifty idea.
That's interesting.
You know, so I would advocate for good regulation.
Huh? Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Obviously, there's a lot that can be said about this topic.